everyone. Today we have our another new episode and we will discuss about artificials and augmented intelligence. We have our world famous speakers, Madam Ali Rice, Mr. David Schumacher and Mr. David Smith. I want to start from Mr. David Schumacher, how you want to analyze today's topic.
Yes, good morning, good afternoon, good day, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Morning here. So where I'd like to start would be with a couple of definitions. I wanted to sharpen up my idea of what other people thought artificial intelligence and augmented intelligence mean. I know what they mean to me. I went to the Merriam-Webster dictionary, and it talks about computer science giving machines the ability to seem like they have computer intelligence. And that seem like struck me. Another definition there was for a machine to be able to copy intelligent human behavior. Made me think that perhaps maybe outside this group, there are those that don't see artificial intelligence or as a machine actually acquiring the same capabilities as human behavior. And that may be a distinction as we talk to the general crowd that's out there. I have a little trouble with the word artificial intelligence in itself. Artificial meaning something that's not real, where it's more like engineered intelligence or intelligence that's in a machine versus intelligence that's in a carbon-based machine, like myself, for example. Anyway, moving on. Augmented. I thought, well, take a look at what they mean by that. I couldn't find an actual definition in a dictionary, that is. There are plenty in trade publications for augmented intelligence, but augmented, making larger, more complete, that's more in line with my idea of artificial intelligence and how it can be used in the future. Because I see artificial intelligence, augmented intelligence as tools for us humans to use. So I looked up the word tools. And there's some predictable definitions there, most of them having something to do with manipulation, maybe manipulation by hand. But the third definition in augmented said a means to an end. And that really struck me because that's what we're really talking about here. When we talk about artificial intelligence or augmented intelligence, what can we do with it? And I think that's an important thing because what we want to do with it, what I want to do with it, is to apply it as a human tool that we can use in our everyday life to improve the human condition. And in improving the human condition, hopefully be able to improve all that's around us. So a tool, as we've talked about before, can be used for so-called good or so-called bad. It can benefit us or it can harm us. Places that this enhanced intelligence can help us, we're already starting to see. Google Maps, for example, that I use when I drive, is a very is a tool that helps me get from place to place without needing to fold maps or remember a place to go, and it can give me information along the way. And more important, I think it's a way for me to become comfortable using these tools every day. The car that I drive has a collision avoidance system in it. It tells me when somebody may be in a blind spot or coming too close, or if I'm parked and starting to back up, go behind. That's another way that we can start to adapt to the use of these tools. Smartwatches, cell phones, the Aura Ring, a number of other devices to bring a means of intelligence closer to us that we can use, that we can benefit. And artificial intelligence being applied to these tools themselves builds upon their utility and builds upon their benefit and makes them even better than they would be before. I mentioned GPS, for example. With artificial intelligence, it sharpens the maps, it sharpens the routes, it makes it more real time. And we're used to the interface of dealing with that. I find that if it doesn't tell me about traffic congestion because it doesn't know it yet, I'm disappointed these days. I never would have had that expectation, obviously, with a paper map. So, personal convenience, safety, these are the type of things that we're starting to see at the consumer level these days. Behind the scenes in the business world, artificial intelligence is used for data mining, data mapping, uh, helping with business decisions. Artificial intelligence isn't something that's coming in the future, it's something that's here right now. And I think we'll end up challenging those definitions that I first started with. And we will shape the product as we move forward. And that gets into the whole area of ethics and how we use these tools and how we apply them and who gets to use them. And that's a great topic for discussion too. But for now, I'll pass the microphone to somebody else to speak, Sharif.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. David Schumacher, for your excellent analysis. Professor David Smith.
David, you did fantastic beginning to get us into the topic, and I love you going through the pieces because, to me, artificial intelligence and augmented intelligence are often used interchangeable, particularly in some of the domains like healthcare and others. Uh, and they really share the same objective, and really share how to begin to use it, apply the knowledge we can create from taking what we receive from sensors and what is inputted, turning that into data, that into knowledge, that into wisdom and action. And that's really the goal as we try to go through and use the systems. You know, it's looking at them as the augmented reality. It's also known as intelligence amplification, cognitive implementation, decision support. I mean, I can go and give you 25 different names of really the augmented intelligence part and how it can be used with this. But the key thing is that both of them use a subset of tools that in many cases are common and begin to try to put wisdom into place. One has more human in the loop, which is augmented intelligence. The the artificial intelligence traditionally has less human in the loop, even though there's exceptions to both sides of the coin. Um, as many of you on the panel know, I have hesitancy to use the term artificial intelligence because it's so broad and that there's so many subsets of artificial intelligence. You know, I tend to say, well, this is machine learning. This is natural language processing. This is just using a tree diagram decision support tool. This is really business intelligence that's using these types of tools. And do because artificial intelligence is worse than the elephant to the blind man. It's more like really a whole herd of elephants when you look at what artificial intelligence is and how it can be used. The couple of quick statistics on this. If I just begin to look at artificial intelligence by itself, uh, it is a market that is, as we know, very fastly growing. In 2020, it was about a $30 billion market. And by 2026, artificial intelligence is going to grow about 35% compound annual growth rate and to about $300 billion by 2026. On the other hand, as I look at augmented reality, in 2020, it was about an $11 billion marketplace. And by 2030, it's expected to grow to about a 121 billion marketplace with a compound annual growth rate of about 26%. So just going back and forth between the two, you can see that AI is a larger marketplace by itself with a faster growth rate in the marketplace, but augmented reality is a smaller market, but has a very important place in places where we can see them working with each other, augmenting each other, and being used. Particularly as we begin to look at some of the places where robotics come into play. Robotics is one where augmented reality, augmented intelligence plays heavier than just pure artificial intelligence. I have seen augmented intelligence robots in healthcare recently. I was having dinner the other night and I had an augmented intelligence robot deliver the food to the table. And,
Thank you.
the waitress came up and eventually put it on the table, but the robot is what brought it out, turned, came to the table, and stopped at the end of the table and kind of said, "What are you going to do with me now?" But that's kind of where the human comes in the loop, where artificial intelligence, we would wanted it to just appear in front of us and be able to use and to be able to take our order. Where augmented intelligence said, gee, we had to put an order in place. Then the robot using the augmentation brought it out. But then a human came in the loop to actually serve it to us and give us those touches. So again, high level, some quick examples, but there's quite a few others that can go through it. But since you have a large panel, I think that's great for right now.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor David Smith. Madam Ali Rice.
Hi. Well, because it's really interesting to figure out where the differentiation is, and also, so I think because we all use smartphones and iPads, a lot of the time we're unaware of when the artificial intelligence is actually kicking in and the algorithm. So I think there's a lot of things that go kind of unnoticed, really, and I've worked in education for years and years, so I love the fact that the application for education, and particularly since we got locked down, that ability to share models and systems and practice. But so for me, there's always an ethical question as well. But there's also the ability to reach a local and a global audience and do things so that we bring kind of like minds together and share knowledge and wisdom is exciting. And I think the aspects to health as well, that so that we can kind of see internally into a body, or have a 3D kind of model of a human body so that we can see it working, that kind of. So I think it's amazing what we can do, but but there's still a kind of a side of caution as to where it's all heading, and it's how whether there's going to be so much automation that people aren't physically doing jobs, or it's because the machines are much better at doing those things than humans are. So I think it's kind of how it affects the workforce and our welfare and the way we live. And essentially, it's whether we are really creating a better world, or one that's more efficient and more, so it's continually manufacturing and mass producing, and whether that's the way forward, in a world where we need to protect the environment and the natural resources we have, so it's kind of, we need to keep questioning whether it's real progress, or whether it's just pushing the envelope and seeing where innovation takes us and what the consequences of that are. So yeah, it's a mixed bag, I think.
Thank you. Mr. Marshall.
Well, thank you, Sharif, for having me on this panel again. And it's great to be on like minds with everybody here. I just listened to Ali express her opinion and her point of view, and I tend to agree with it. Our approach, our business is climate restoration and climate repair, as previous people have seen on the panels that I've been on. And I just participated in a symposium in California for the Bioresources Alliance. And the topic did not come up per se, but in a way, it's all relevant, as Ali pointed out. The topic that we think is important is not just or the use of it, but how it's being used in general in a format. And the format that I recommend people to look at, and maybe we need to modify, especially after COP26, is the fact that the economic model that we have right now is based on consumption, and high consumption, and scarcity. But I think part of that is false, and the artificial intelligence and the other technology that we're talking about can actually prove that to be otherwise. I mean, right now in the United States, where I am currently, 40% of the food that is grown here in the United States is thrown out every year. 40%. Yet we have people who are starving to death or near starvation in the United States, and most people don't perceive the United States to be that kind of society. We have haves and have-nots, and that's around the world. So I think the logic of, or the idea of using artificial intelligence and these technologies goes hand in hand with the economic model that we want to pursue. My recommendation is to pursue a different type of model. One and it's articulated not by me, but it's a book called Sacred Economics. I recommend everybody read that book. That's a book that kind of lays out the platform that I think the world needs to go in if it's going to stay around beyond 5 to 7 years due to the climate crisis that is impinging upon the world. The use of these technologies can be beneficial, as was pointed out by Donald. By David and David and Donald, the two Davids actually. What we see here is a situation in which we ourselves, our technologies, we have 4 fundamental technologies and a lot of patents and trade secrets, but it's not that which is important. What's important is how they're applied. And we apply them through joint ventures, and we apply them in a stringent taxonomy, and we use these technologies to actually supplement human interaction with technology and to get an outcome in which a triple bottom line approach is implemented. The triple bottom line of obviously being a decent return on investment for investors and bondholders, but more than that, a return on the climate impacts, improving climate impacts, and maybe the third element, which is social impacts. Social impacts, I think this technology directly affects social impacts. How do people work in a world where they get paid a decent wage, put their kids through college, retire healthily, and have a decent life, an enjoyable life on this planet, and a safe one? So I think the methodology of using these technologies, as was pointed out, could be used for ill or gain. And when I say gain, I don't mean financial gain. I mean for better health and welfare for people. I think that the approach needs to be that it's all about attitude. It's about people in the end. It's not the technology. I mean, you can have a surgeon who could do open heart surgery and kill somebody on purpose. I mean, it's been known to happen. It's rare, but it's been known to happen. So I think the thing is intention. And I again think that the technologies in and of themselves are tools and should be functions of the human mind and human implementation. We do that. We use artificial intelligence and AR to monitor and make sure that the quality control is good. We use VR for training people. We use these technologies, and they're going to grow and they're going to improve. They're going to change over time. And as has been stated so far, these technologies have to be implemented. They're going to be a part of our society. But the question is, what is the goal of society? How do we go about doing it? And what are the tools that we need to bring to the table? Not the tools themselves of the technology, but the social tools that we bring so that people have a beneficial opportunity to gain a quality of life. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Mr. Marshall. Professor Edward.
There we go. Can you hear me now? Sorry. Okay. Yeah. I'm sure I cannot add to what the two Davids have said. They've done such a wonderful job of explaining artificial intelligence, the difference between artificial intelligence, augmented intelligence, and I would add, by the way, artificial general intelligence. I know a number of folks who are working on that as well, and that's a whole different discussion we can perhaps have in a future show. And by the way, I certainly appreciate what Ali has said about the importance of keeping the human in the process, because after all, artificial intelligence is a tool that we use to help ourselves. But I want to make a couple of what I think are critical points. The big challenge is going to be our institutions and our public policies, which have to change and be flexible with the advent of artificial intelligence, just like we had to have institutional change when the Industrial Revolution was occurring several centuries ago. And by the way, I see the use of artificial intelligence and augmented intelligence and much of the technology we've been discussing on these shows as the province of entrepreneurs. That is, individuals and businesses and groups of individuals trying this, trying that, trying to see what fits best. Something doesn't quite work. Well, you go on and you try something else. Henry Ford had 2 companies that failed before he got Ford Motor Company that succeeded. We all know the story of Steve Jobs, who did a great job at first at Apple, got kicked out, came back, and did all sorts of incredible stuff. So the importance is, since we're talking about the World Talent Economic Forum, it's the talent, it's you folks who are listening to me right now on Sharif's fine show that are going to be the leaders. But I want to offer a word of caution, but is perhaps different from some of the caution that we have heard before. That is to say, I see the biggest danger as sclerotic, ossified, inflexible bureaucracies, and especially government bureaucracies. In a free market, if Steve Jobs screws up and makes something that doesn't work, customers don't buy it. And companies are always going out of business or having to retool in order to meet consumer demands and to meet competition. That's crucial. But I see the biggest problem in the future is institutions, both informal institutions and more than that, governmental institutions that are going to be the problem, because they have vested interests in doing things the old way. They are, in most cases, arrogant. They think they can do central planning. Central planning just doesn't work. You need the entrepreneurs involved. I do not want artificial intelligence planning anything, because I don't think they're that smart. Okay, I think they're smart for many things, but I want to keep humans in the picture, and I think that's absolutely crucial. And by the way, one of the areas I see such dangers, frankly, is the reaction to the supposed global warming crisis, because I see that in many cases the cure is far worse than the alleged problem. You take a look at the energy costs. Now, I want to see efficient energy. I want to see the cheapest energy possible. I want to heat my house in the best way possible and air condition my house in the best way possible, so it helps myself, my kids, and so forth. I'm all for that. But again, you can't have central planners doing it. And what I really worry, if you want to talk about a horror movie, take a look at some of the horror movies of artificial intelligence, getting out of hand. By the way, I'm very strong in favor of artificial intelligence, so I'm not a Luddite by any means. But again, I worry that if you have a central planning artificial intelligence or a central planning bureaucracies like the horrible ones right downtown here in Washington, D.C., or in the capitals of all of our worlds, then it's going to be more of a dystopia than a utopia. So folks, let's leave it open to entrepreneurs to take these incredible technologies and use them, and not have a bunch of central planners and Soviet type planners doing the job. So there's my rant, and I hope somebody in the Asia Pacific area is listening, because you guys in the Asia Pacific area are doing so great. Keep it up, guys.
Thank you, Professor Edward. Professor Donald.
Well, I'd like to point out to Edward that there's quite a bit of central planning in China and other Asia Pacific countries that are the ones that are
quite
doing
a few
quite
concentration camps too. Yeah, take a look at Hong Kong. Exactly correct.
there's concentration camps here. We've got more people in prison than any per capita than any other country in the world by far.
Because they committed crime.
Yes.
Bogus. So did the people in concentration camps in China. It's all a matter of opinion, isn't it?
No, it is not.
Okay. Thank you, Professor
Okay.
Edward.
I'll go on, but I do want to say one thing, that Professor Edward works for an organization that's funded basically by ExxonMobil.
By the way, I don't
work
for the Heartland Institute. We're not funded by that.
Professor Edward and Professor Donald. Professor Edward and Professor Donalds, because One Talent Economy Forum, we are strongly working with different governments, as well as when anybody join in One Talent Economy Forum, even Professor Donald, Professor Edward, we always think about contribution for the society. So that's why, at least for today's discussion, I will not allow who is working for what. Yes, definitely we will discuss it later, not today's session. I'm sorry about that. Please focus on topic.
Okay. Well, first off, the idea that there's artificial intelligence is you have to be, I think David pointed this out, you have to be kind of careful about that, because there's this idea that of artificial general intelligence, for instance, and the person who invented deep learning pointed out that's a pretty ridiculous idea, because you wouldn't really want to have a surgeon, for instance, that was an expert at pumping gas too, and had all these other types of things that artificial and general intelligence would entail. So just the concept of artificial general intelligence actually doesn't really make any sense. And certainly the person who invented deep learning, David, his name's, I'm dropping his name right now, said really doesn't think it's reasonable. But there's a very interesting basically website I found by the American Medical Association about augmented deep uses of augmented artificial intelligence in medicine. And some of the things that it's being used for are as we've talked about before, kind of obvious things like, well, the way deep learning works is it looks at a huge number of instances of something, some sort of thing, and it trains these neural networks to basically be able to recognize those things or differences in those things. And so one of the things that it's used for is the patterns of lung cancer or colon cancer or something. They'll notice in x-rays differences. But some of the other things that it's being used for that are really cool are patterns of epidemics, patterns of how much people respond to interventions for different kinds of drug cures. But I'll post a link for a list of all the different kinds of things. But the thing that really they talked about that I found really interesting is that in order for doctors to be able to use these things, they need to have a new kind of training and a new kind of education, because they don't work that well. I mean, they work well, but they also fail spectacularly. There's they found for the deep learning for self-driving cars that they could take Post-it notes and put them on stop signs. And the Post-it notes on stop signs would fool the deep learning system in the cars so that they not only didn't recognize them, they thought they were something entirely different, and it would cause them to fail spectacularly. And so doctors have to learn and understand what they're seeing when they to be able to work and coordinate with those systems. And we're just at the beginning of trying to figure out how we can develop that and add that to medical school, medical training, and other kinds of areas like that. And the one other thing I want to say about the training is that there was a really interesting article in this group of articles where they looked at the geographical distribution of the training data that they were using. And they found out that it was pretty much all from Boston, California, certain parts of California and New York, and a few other places. And that most of the states in the United States had no training data from them at all. And so what it's recognizing is really only a subset of people. And so these errors are creeping into the way that the deep learning systems are used. I want to say that really these days, deep learning has kind of become synonymous with artificial intelligence, because artificial intelligence existed since the 60s, I guess, or when Minsky and Chomsky and everybody started thinking about it. But it just never really went very far until the GPUs came along, and it allowed deep learning to actually work. And once deep learning started to work, then there were huge jumps in, for instance, voice recognition was terrible until deep learning came along, and now it works pretty well. And facial recognition, a whole bunch of things that we're starting to use, we've been using it for. So in any event, I think that the most important thing about augmented deep learning is that you have to realize that in order to augment it, the people who are using it have to understand what it is that they're seeing and how valid what they are is, and be able to start making decisions about how to be able to use it, because it's not perfect. So anyway, that's what I'm going to say.
Thank you. Thank you. Madam Dulcie.
Hi. So this is interesting. I want to say I do agree with Marshall that intention is very key on how we approach applying augmented reality or machine learning to artificial intelligence and machine learning to augmented reality. So having the proper intention while creating these systems, I think, will be the key in making sure that we don't allow these systems to bring us into a dystopia, and understanding what our intentions are when building out these systems for all of humanity is probably what is needed right now. To make it just for the sake of making it is not going to help us. So to make it with real intentions that help certain sections in society, both on the local level and on the global level through augmented reality, is really what we should be discussing. Like how do we take our world and augment it in a way that makes sense for everybody and not just for a certain set of people. So so when Donald was talking about contextualizing this information and being able to utilize our machine learning to contextualize our information, that's something I'm working on right now with my startup. So I have a startup called Perception Grid, and we're taking contextual information everywhere, all over the world. That's anything that's hashtagged on the internet, and we're aggregating it in a way that makes sense for learning, for training, for retail, for socializing. And we're putting it all on a graph database, which is a machine learning database. And this machine learning database will take your content, ingest that content, and then put it on this graph that you can navigate across. And it makes things very contextual. So it allows you to really, hone in on a region, on an area, and bring attention to whatever it is that you're trying to bring attention to. So at the core of it, it allows businesses and individuals to create some sort of experience with machine learning and augmented reality for basically anything. And right now we started with field service and giving experts in the field the ability to find solutions that are outside of training manuals or outside of any kind of sanctioned knowledge base that the company gives. So they're able to navigate the graph and find other solutions if possible, and also reach out to people in some sort of collaborative way. So that's one way that we're using machine learning and augmented reality that's actually helping and creating tool sets for people. Another way that I see augmented reality and AI, machine learning working hand in hand recently or currently is through face filters. Being able to uh, you make a filter that augments you in such a way that it makes sense, and it's not just wearing a mask, it's actually really changing the way you look and really giving you a brand new appearance that's very like detailed and in lockstep with your features. So that's a cool thing. And for the fun aspect of doing a face filter and sharing with your friends and going online for social media, I mean, all of that's fun. But then we start on that slippery slope of, if I'm changing the way I look all the time, or I am wearing a pair of glasses in real life and I'm walking around real life, and everybody I see, I tell my AI to turn everybody into a frog, or, completely block everybody out of my view, right? Like those things are kind of interesting when it comes to applying augmented reality and AI. And I feel like those things have more impact on the mental health of users than any other kind of back end implementation of machine learning with augmented reality. Because now we're dealing with people's mental perception of everything around them and the ability to change what you see around you that is not the reality of the world. Like that's an interesting thing that I think we're going to have to grapple with as we start moving more into this space. Um, and one thing that I wanted to say, this is something I've been thinking about for a long time. I'm not a machine learning expert, I'm not an AI person, but I do really feel that the future, if we get it right, we could make a future where every human is born with an AI, right? And an AI chaperone of sorts. And that AI is kind of, seated with a human manual of sorts, right? And it understands, the baby and grows with the baby and becomes a chaperone of that person throughout their life, that helps them traverse between virtual and augmented spaces, acts like an agent, is a good friend to that person, and then eventually, as time goes on, becomes a proxy for you, and that can and really knows you and really understands you and can represent you, and even after you pass, then you have your immortality. You now have this agent that is now your person. Like this is something that I've been thinking about for quite a while, and I see other people in the space pushing this or trying to go in this direction. So these are things that I think are the most important aspects of what we're going to do with augmented reality and AI. It's like, how does it affect the individual, and how does the individual's own reality get changed around how we're, making these tools, or what kind of tools we're putting out in the world. I'm fearful of the dystopian aspects of it, but I also want to say we're already living in the dystopian aspects of it. Everybody wants to say that the future is somewhere off in the distance and we're not experiencing it right now, but no, we are. We're experiencing a lot of this stuff right now, and we're on that precipice, and we could either fall off and go down the deep end into the uncanny valley and allow all of this technology to just be chaotic and whatever it is, and we can have a cyberpunk future of dystopia, or we can all work together to figure out ethics and standards around what we're building, and figure out how to allow these technologies to thrive, but not completely take over what we're doing as a society. Um, I'm very bullish on augmented reality. I think augmented reality is the future. I don't think that being completely submerged or immersed in a VR world is where we're going to go as a society. I feel Apple is really pushing that right now with their devices. They're pushing a more of lifestyle aspect of machine learning and augmented reality. They're not trying to put you inside an immersive space. They want you to be out in the world, running and playing and hanging out with friends and attending events and things. But at the same time, bringing in this contextual information that makes sense for whatever you're engaging in. I like that. I think that's an interesting way, an approach, better than the way Meta is approaching, where they, you want to work, shop, eat, play, party, hang out with your friends, engage everything, all in Meta. I don't think so. I don't think I'm gonna jump all in Meta and do everything there like that. I like to know that I can break away, I can go into real spaces, and I can enjoy real life. And if I want to, I can bring in bits of content in my space that makes sense for the moment. So I know that it's scary to think about the climate. It's scary to think about the dystopian aspects of it. But I think if we're all smart people, if we get together and we come up with standards and we come up with a way to help society and help humanity and understand that really at the core of all this is individual people. That's what we are. We're individual people in the center of our technology. How does our technology help us as individuals and help us as a society in a whole? So that's my 2 cents about it. But thank you.
Thank you, madam. Professor David J. Kelly.
Well, with regard to the answering the question, how the use of AI will affect augmented reality, I mean these are almost completely. I mean, the technologies are certainly complementary, but they're really unrelated specifically. AR, just looking at AR, AR is not really there yet in terms of mass consumer adoption. I think we still have quite a ways to go. I did an analysis of that particular technology and where it's going a couple of years ago, and my prediction was 3 more versions of HoloLens before it becomes practical, and we've only had 1 more version. So that means 2 more versions of AR in like the HoloLens platform before we get to something that's really mass marketable. Eventually AR is going to get to the point where we'll have implants and contact lenses and maybe a pair of glasses without lenses that'll power those contact lenses or something like that. But we've still got a long ways to go. They're working on the technology. It'll get there. There's prototypes of some of that stuff, but it's a long ways. But assuming we get there, and I think we will, within the next 10 years or so, AR could potentially affect all kinds of things. It could get to the point where I could walk into a Starbucks and have a virtual screen sitting in front of me with a virtual keyboard, and that's my computer. And it could be some big, 42-inch display virtually, or things like when people walk into Starbucks and I see little bubbles pop up above their heads showing social media scores or all kinds of crazy stuff. There's a lot of dystopian sci-fi, I would call it dystopian anyway, where you have all this evasive advertising in your vision as you walk around. And just to talk about the kind of stuff that's possible with that. So I've done a lot of AR and AI work over the years. But I've also touched on some technology around interactive, intelligent advertising, but not like on the web, but actually what's called like architectural implementations of technology. Like, for example, I designed part of the Microsoft retail stores, and things like the Nike Touch Wall. And there was a dystopian scenario we talked about that I was able to actually get the team to build and test and make work. And I think there's a lot of concern that this kind of technology will get abused to some degree. Actually, speaking of that kind of technology, so I'll give you guys the scenario, but this screen behind me over here, it's like a giant narrow iPad, is actually capable of doing the what I'll describe. So the scenario was that imagine you're in a mall, assuming malls are still around, and you're walking with like your girlfriend, right? And you go to this jewelry store and you buy a necklace, diamond necklace or something. Now, the next week in an entirely different city, you're walking with your wife through the mall and you walk by a jewelry store and the front of the store recognizes you, transforms and does an advertisement. Hey, remember that diamond necklace you bought? Now get a matching set of earrings for $19.99.99, and not thinking that would cause anyone any problems. I mean, that's kind of a crazy scenario, but we're capable of having technology do that. And now you're going to place it in AR. I think there's the chance of a little bit of abuse for that kind of advertising working its way into our daily lives, especially with AR. But I think the technology will become pervasive to the point where not having AR will be like people will look at you like you're a country bumpkin from like way out in the middle of nowhere and a Luddite. And I think that's kind of a dangerous place a little bit. Now, when you talk about AI, there are two kinds of things. A lot of times we're talking about machine learning. AGI in particular is still quite a ways away. I know there's a lot of people working on it. I do think we'll have it within 10 years, but how AGI affects us versus how AI or machine learning and these kinds of technologies affect us are completely different. AI is really about or machine learning is about understanding data and making sure we make the best use of it. And when you apply that to AR, it's the same thing as with anything. It's going to make it'll make certain uses of the technology better or more efficient, or you'll curate content better, or you'll have better responses in games, or better help when you're typing an email or thinking about typing an email, and it's just doing it without you typing because it's reading your mind. This kind of thing, as opposed to when you start talking about AGI, you're talking about replacing things like creative thought or actual, human level or greater skills. As soon as we have AGI, just like that, we'll have super intelligence, and super intelligence will might not necessarily be as dramatic as everyone thinks, but it'll affect all kinds of things and take everything to a whole new level, especially when you start talking about the use in economics, in banking and stock trading, and I mean, you'll be able to actually, you will have to treat AGI as a person, and with machine learning, I don't think you can ever take the human out of the loop, but with AGI, that becomes a distinct possibility. And from my standpoint, that's a long ways away, but a long ways away means like 5 years. I think the technology is much closer than people realize. I mean, AGI is much closer than people realize. And with that kind of technology, I mean, things are going to start advancing so fast, you won't even be able to keep up with it. And that's where you get this idea of a technical singularity, because everything will start advancing faster than humanly possible to understand or keep up. Now, in my opinion, I think we'll need to, at least a portion of the population will more than likely become part of that technology, allowing some portion of humanity to keep up. But that's we'll see. You know, I know a lot of people don't like the idea of us becoming so closely connected to our technology, but I think that's really the only way to ensure the survival of humanity in the long run. And I think AR is a big part of that. I think when you start having super intelligence and you're augmenting the human brain and all of this kind of thing, the best interface into the human mind is through the optic nerves. And the best way to do that is through AI or AR. Being able to overlay our senses, or even to do full immersion VR, it would still be through the optic nerves, and I think that the technology will blend. But I think that's where we're going with AI, both AGI and narrow AI, and with AR.
Thank you for your excellent analysis, Mr. Markey.
Hello, glad to be part of this discussion. Glad to add some insight from a different perspective and things of that nature. I come from the world of entertainment, event planning, and media, as some of y'all know from previous sessions that we've had and everything. And I've definitely seen AI and artificial intelligence even being used in those platforms and things of that nature. As a matter of fact, I just finished last week a Black Business Expo, and before that there was a company called blackowned.com that I did a opening panel or an opening discussion as they were launching their platform and things of that nature. And I can tell you, they definitely did use some AR in one of the cases when we did one of the expos. The last session, which was about 3 months ago, they actually did have one of those virtual malls that you're talking about, and people were very fascinated by it. Loved looking at the virtual malls, loved seeing the things that they could see in that respect and everything along those lines. And I also did watch recently one of those dystopia movies where you're talking about where people were literally being bombarded by advertisements through their glasses and through other means and things of that nature. And actually that was one of the themes of the movie, was how that was going to impact people in their lives and things along those lines. Madam Dulcie, I want to thank you for giving me a great idea, because I had never thought about an AI nanny. And I'm sitting there like, hey, that sounds like a movie idea. So I need to go ahead and talk to my movie friends and see about creating that, even though I would be worried because we're having a hard enough time in our education system with one individual, and having two individuals that we're trying to train at the same time might be a very difficult thing. But it does sound like a great movie idea and all of that. And of course, there is a digital divide that is going on in society as well. And I want y'all to do me a very big favor. I want y'all to all look at this panel that is right here, right now, and notice something about this panel and everything. This panel is mostly made of, and do not take this wrong, white males. This is part of the problem, because we are talking about a serious digital divide that already exists in society and things of that nature. I said the majority, Sharif. I did not say there weren't other people, because of yourself, myself, and Madam Dulcie and others, but I said the majority is made of white males and things of that nature. And that is part of the problem, because if you look at what is happening, a lot of it, we're already in the middle of a digital divide. And that means that there is economic consequences for what is going on as well, because we've got people that are having a hard enough time. There's a wealth gap, and it's not just here in America, it's throughout the world. And if we create these kind of AI augmented reality situations and we don't give it to the rest of society, then we'll create this kind of situation where a lot of people like Elon Musk and others can go on joy rides, which is basically all I consider those space rides that they went on when they went up to the kind of atmosphere, came back down, and then told us how great it was. Sounds like one big joy ride to me and everything. So one of the things that I would hope that we will do is find ways that we can bring it into the context for everybody to enjoy these great benefits and great things that are taking place. And I'm going to land my plane on that note.
Thank
Well,
you. Thank you,
I
Mr.
just wanted to say one thing about the nanny, the AI nanny. The idea is that the nanny would already become preset with things, so it's actually just helping the teacher. The teacher wouldn't be teaching that nanny also. It would just be helping the teacher. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. This is really great discussions, and I want to share some good news. Before that, I just want to add like World Talent Economy Forum, this organization for people-oriented organization. Already we are working with developing nations. Next month, from January 1 to December 1 to December 5, we have very exclusive event with Rwanda government. And beside that, I just want to share some of the names because already 30 speakers, they assured that they will join in World Talent Economy Forum dialogue. Beside that, Mr. Markley, Professor Edward, Mr. David Schumacher, Madam Ali Rice, Madam Dalsey. If you want to join, just you have to send your profile because we have to work with government for public-private policy. We have some specific policy. We have to share our information and speaker picture for designing and for heavily promotion. But I just want to share the good news. Maybe you will be inspired that how positively we work for global community. And I just want to ensure for next 12 months, we already go for collaboration with 12 countries, governments and corporations in developing world. So for this upcoming virtual global dialogue, we have 4 topics. First December, COVID-19 and public-private partnership. 2nd December, tech, trade and investment in Africa beyond COVID-19 challenge. 3rd December, ICT for women entrepreneurs in innovations and job creation. And number 5, like 5 December, we have event on techno policy, that how we can, because for African nation, for this Rwanda, we will develop policy as well. And very good news is that we will train 600 entrepreneurs in Rwanda, 600 women. And we will solve many problems, and we need people, experienced people like you, because all of the speakers is very valuable for us. But I'm just declaring the speaker because you can understand how capable World Talent Economy Forum is and how we are working. Yes, moderator, I'm Sharifuddin Ahmed Rana. Speakers, Beta Yuhabiar Mana is a Minister of Trade and Industry. He will join. Paula Ingabiri, Minister of ICT and Innovation, Rwanda. Josephi Umerwa, Managers, Knowledge Management and Technical Assistant, Development Bank of Rwanda. Bai Singh Jenathi, she is Minister of Gender and Family Promotion, Rwanda. Uzei Nargaziman, Minister of Finance and Economics, Planning, Rwanda. Dr. Nagamiji Daniel, Minister of Health, Rwanda. Beside that, Ambassador of Japan to Rwanda, Mr. Hashiro Imai, Nigeria High Commission, Kigali, Rwanda, Mrs. Ishatu Alia Musu. Beside that, Mr. Sylvan, he is also Burundi ambassadors, Ambassador of Kingdom of Netherlands, Matjis is Coulters, Mr. Coulters, Senator Anning from Australia, and we have our speakers, Mr. Marshall, CEO Advanced Resilient Technology, Mr. Donalds, Social Capital Consultant, Home Stoner, Chairman Pacific Rim Business Council, Professor Adrian David Chiok, Professor IU University Tokyo. Number 16, Paul Beckwith, Climate System Analyst, Canada. 17, Mr. Rob Enderle, Principal Analyst, Enderle Groups. 18, Paul Sladax, Founder, Good News. Number 19, David Smith, CEO, Strategic Pathway. Number 20, Dr. Fred Philip, President Tando. Number 21, Dr. Nikhil Agarwal, CEO, IIT Kanpur. 22, Professor Ainul Jaria Maidin, International Islamic University, Malaysia. 23, Iftekhar Pathan, he is a World Business Angel Investment Forum Turkish Senators. 24, Donald Oye, Chairman of HNO International. 25, Larin Segil, Chairman and CEO, Exceptional Women Awareness Foundation from Silicon Valley. 26, Mr. Charis, he's a researcher, School of Information Studies. 27, Mr. Donald O. Owens. 28, Dr. Shoha Hakiki, Professor, Paris Graduate School. 29, Sharidan Tatsuno from USA. 30, Mr. David Kelly, AGI Lab. This is our 30 speakers, but we need more speakers. I request all of our speakers, those who are interested, especially World Talent Economy Forum, we are working for national contributions. It's not my personal interest. It's not for any startup. Yes, startup is important because they can contribute nationally, or it's not for only for corporations. It's for profit organizations, and always I try to maintain transparency. We have our honorable board of advisors, I think around 40 members, our board of advisors. So definitely whatever we do, we try to discuss and analyze. And yes, developing nations has a lot of problem. It needs a lot of solution. So I'm sure all of our speakers has very good solutions. They can work as an academician, as a businessman, or as a solution provider. They can work with World Talent Economy Forum. And why I'm targeting developing nations? Because developing nations need more support. And I'm really impressed how Rwanda government supporting World Talent Economy Forum, how Malaysian government supporting World Talent Economy Forum, how Bangladesh government supporting World Talent Economy Forum, or Indian government supporting World Talent Economy Forum. Because this is the real relationship we are developing with government, with corporations, and with academia. And we need all of your transparent support, because your support can change millions of people. I know personally because I grow in a developing nations. But for Mr. Markley, I want to share one good news or another thing. Anyway, my 2-3 generation, they live in UK. My brother daughters, she is, yes, definitely my brother married a British woman. She is white. So I'm black, definitely I'm black. So this is actually, even from my family cultures, we know who is black, who is white. This is not important. I can share my daughters, my brother daughters. So this is not important. Important, we are human, and what we are contributing for the global community. And I can ensure World Talent Economy Forums will be part of history with the contribution of all of the speakers. And I'm very much happy. Last 1 year, 4 months, we do 100% online. And how we are collaborating and supporting the developing nations, they are very happy. They are very happy. And soon, definitely in between 1 year in the Asia Pacific, perhaps we will be one of the influential and effective think tank for Asia Pacific. I just want to share National University Singapore, they regularly communicate with us, their professor, their researcher, and they believe how our speakers, our people attending in open dialogue, this is the real life dialogue, and this is very important for the ASEAN community. So thank you everyone for joining today's sessions. I really want to give thanks all of our speakers, those who supporting us, all of our people in the backstage, they also supporting us. Even behind the scene, many people, they do not join, but always they are helping to collaborate with the government, with the corporations and academy. And you can contribute for millions of people. That is the things. And we have to work hard. And I believe in this way, if we contribute, we will be part of history. So thank you, everyone. I directly want to go for the concluding remarks, and I request those who want to join in our visionary project, just send your CV. You are the member of World Talent Economy Forum, and offer your solution to the developing world. Very simple things, no complex, and we are 100% transparent. We have our board of advisors. Whatever we will do, we will discuss with our board of advisors, and they will take decisions. So thank you, everyone. Hopefully, I will share more good news with you, more effective news with all of our speakers. Thank you. So I directly want to go for the concluding remarks. I want to start from Mr. David Smith. I know he has appointment. Mr. David Smith.
Sharif, thank you. I love the discussion today. I wish Mark was still on, because I was going to tell him the real important factor was today's panel is that there's 3 Davids on it. And that is some of the common things as you look at how augmented intelligence really happens. No, I do have people sometimes accuse me of being a Borg, so I guess that works as well. But really, this topic is one of such importance that we have to understand it. And there's a lot of places where artificial and augmented intelligence combine. We look at the digital voice assistants, many of the smart home devices, a lot of e-banking. Um, we look at where facial recognition and artificial intelligence and augmented reality comes in as part of the security. But the biggest place we're going to see the two of them combine is when we look at self-driving cars and drones and how that's going to go towards the future. Uh, we're not going to have a car that is fully autonomous using full AI for at least the next 20 years, where it's not only hands off, but minds off. And so the fact that augmented intelligence is going to be that important with somewhere where billions of dollars of research are going into it on how to make trucks, cars, everything fully autonomous using AI and AI tools, combined with sensor and sensor networks, throwing Internet of Things on that, and using all different types of processors and things to make it happen. It's really clear to me that the importance is that artificial intelligence and augmented intelligence are going to be around helping each other for decades and decades. And it's important for us to understand that. The area where entrepreneurs need to focus on this is actually the intersection of the two. AI is AI's best use is when artificial intelligence is invisible. And augmented intelligence done properly, the artificial intelligence is invisible and it's helping produce the better outcome. So if I was an entrepreneur, if I was a university looking at research areas, those are the intersection points where I would spend my time trying to see what can I do that's innovative there and bring it to market. I love the concept of the nanny. Uh, I would like one for my 27-year-old sometime because we're all just kids as we grow up. And there's things which I think would be great for us to do with that. But the fact that going back to the topic with artificial and augmented intelligence combining, that is the intersection where things like a nanny, kind of like we saw on the Jetson television show, can become a reality because it's that interaction. It's the nuances of picking up our patterns. It's the nuances of understanding the ethics behind our decision making processes. In fully augmented autonomous cars, the classic example is, would you drive into the crowd of people or would you hit the baby and kill the baby? Those are the types of things where it's difficult to go ahead and put those elements into it. And that's the area where we have to do more to understand the human aspect of the augmented intelligence put on top of the more machine-centric part of artificial intelligence. And that's where it really comes down is how can we as a society, how can we as universities, how can we as entrepreneurs, how can we as commercial companies, how can we as government put the right elements in place to allow both of these to thrive and make a difference in our society. So, Sharif, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Professor David Schumacher.
Yes, thank you to all the other Davids. Appreciate everyone being here. No, seriously. For my closing remarks, I want to go back to where I started and emphasize that whatever we're talking about here, AI, augmented reality, these are all tools. And I see augmented reality, as one of the other David said, as kind of the interface for allowing us to participate fully with this. So I think David Smith is right on when he said that that's an area for great innovation, and obviously a place that's really going to capture my interest. But I want to emphasize the human in all of this. When we talk about augmented reality and we talk about AI and even AGI, sometimes the human gets lost in the translation. Just observing how we use automation today, we need the human front end. When I call into a company and I want to solve a problem, and I have to push 1 and then push 5 and then push 7 and then get pre-recordings, I find that very frustrating. And I will migrate to another company that can give me better customer service where somebody can talk to me. So a good customer service model that I've seen uses the human up front to interface and to talk to me and other humans. But behind them is the augmentation. These days, it may be on a computer screen, it may be on a tablet, may be information that gets piped into them, into their headsets. So they're augmented already. This is going to be even more utilized as we go forward. But we need to remember to stay focused on that human-to-human connection, because that's what's really going to work well for all of us. Now, I say that, but how do we make that happen? Well, I said that if I call into one company and I don't like my customer service experience, I change companies. Then maybe that's a cell phone provider. I'll change company and go to someplace else that will give me the customer service experience that I want. So it becomes incumbent on me and everybody listening to shape how we want this to go into the future by where we spend our time and where we spend our money. Because what we give presents to, people that want to sell to us, people that want to influence us are going to pay attention to that because they have to, because I'm in control where I spend my attention, and I'm also in control of where I spend my money. And that's how we can influence policy decisions. We can influence those evil bureaucracies in the government. I'm making a joke. The evil bureaucracies in the corporations, they're just as bad. So let's focus on the human experience and use these tools to our advantage. Thank you, Sharif.
Thank you, Mr. David Schumacher. Madam Ali Rice, what's your concluding remarks?
Okay, so I've written a couple of notes. So basically, I think that AI and AR are there. It's amazing to think that they're going to revolutionize education and research and enable us to assimilate and impart knowledge. And I'm to be honest, I think human potential is incredible. And one of the things that we haven't done is we haven't got anywhere near to actually realizing the human potential. And children, you know, NASA did a survey and a study, and children have have genius, and the education system somehow or other knocks it out of them. And part of that is because of their creativity. And I'm sorry, but I don't particularly like the nanny idea. I think that we have, you know, we're all mind, body, and spirit, and our spirit, energy, and creativity, and inspiration and imagination is part of all of us. And there's not many people that are tapped into it. And the innovators that are the innovators that create their own lives and see visions and, you know, and find possibility. And I think that's what we should impart into our young people and our, you know, our children, so that there's a, you know, for me, the world is a beautiful place that we need to protect. And it's really easy for technology to create virtual worlds that supposedly transcend the one that we have. And I think the thing is that we need to still stay focused on the fact, you know, that we're part and parcel of an incredible natural world that, you know, that we should, you know, we should preserve. So I think, you know, technology should enable us to, you know, have a human experience where there's equality and people do, you know, that everyone has food and the distribution of food, you know, so that we're not wasteful and we're not constantly consuming, and that we're our kind of goal is about being happy and fulfilled, in whatever we do. And as so I think, sometimes I think we're pushed to want things that aren't really, aren't really the things that fulfill us. And our families, I think for me, I've got 2 teenagers, and I want to see them achieve their dreams and pursue their gifts and talents. And, if everybody did that, and everybody, I think that's important. And maybe, the fact that you can, the AI and the IR, that you can tap, the AI enables you to translate one language to another, or communicate and connect across, thousands of miles. That's where the beauty is, that connection. So I think it's, I think it's about kind of pushing forward on connection and best practice, and where we can expand awareness as opposed to keep consuming and keep all of the corporates in business that aren't necessarily good for health and well-being. So yeah, we just need to look at where the alternatives are and where the win-wins are.
Thank you. Mr. Marshall, what's your concluding remarks?
Again, Sharif, thank you for having me on this panel, and I appreciate everybody's opinion on this panel. I noticed there's been some differences of opinion, some of which I agreed, some of which I don't, but I appreciate the freedom of thought and that this forum allows for, and so I want to send my appreciation for that. My background is not about the technology, it's about the adoption of the innovations and technology. For some time, I've been working with different types of innovations and technologies and services that become adopted by the public at large, and mostly through a capitalist view, not a socialist view. So the adoption of AI and AR are important. They're going to be here, whether we like it or not, because they're created by human beings. Now, it's true that there is artificial intelligence that creates other artificial intelligence. We have computer codes that do that, and that might evolve, and it probably will evolve. But I think at the core of it, and the heart of it, is humans. And I want to express a personal point of view. I have 4 grandchildren, 2 of them just born within this year in March. But my oldest grandson, I have 3 grandsons and 1 granddaughter, and of course the granddaughter is key. She is the queen. Everybody bows down to her. But including my grandsons. But my oldest grandson, when he was 3 years old, was kind of an artificial intelligence modality like Dolce talked about. He guided his father at 3 years old when he took the iBook or the iPad out of my son's hands, and my son is a banker and a technology savvy kid. He's not a kid, but a father. And he said to his father, "Dad, you don't know how to operate this. I do." So it just goes to show you that there's always room for innovation, always room for adoption of innovation, and it's never going to be the way we all think it's going to be. It will unfold over time. And I think David Shoemaker made a good point about bringing the connection between these elements and implementation. I also think Ellie brought out I liked her statement about the spirituality of things. I don't think that computer programs will necessarily have spirituality. They may, but I don't foresee that myself, but you never know. So the point is that it's the human touch that I think will make the difference in what we're doing, and both in the developed and underdeveloped world. And we need to create some sense of purpose and in a positive point of view, not a dystopian point of view. So I'll leave it at that. And again, Sharif, thank you for having me on this panel.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Marshall. Professor Edward, what's your concluding remarks?
Sorry. By the way, it's Marshall. It's funny. Last week I was using the audio dictation thing on this iPad. On this MacBook. So because one of my daughters was trying to explain something, and she was, going very fast. I said, instead of writing it down, let's just have you speak into this thing. And then I went to my other daughter, and said, "Oh, by the way, do you know on your iPad you have this interesting thing?" She says, "Oh yeah, I discovered that, long time ago." I have two daughters who love their iPads, and yet who I work with very closely because I want them to keep in mind that we are all human. But I'll make a couple of quick comments. By the way, the David Schumacher one, I changed from Verizon to AT&T because I can actually get them on the phone when I have a problem. And I decided to buy one of these. I still have Windows machines because I can actually call up Apple and get someone on the phone within a few minutes, as opposed to a phone tree that I have to sit there for an hour and they disconnect me. So I appreciate that. But on the topic of AI and augmented, I'm very positive on the medical uses for it. I see that that being able to sequence a genome and then have real world data coming in from wearable diagnostics being monitored by an AI is really a path that can move us from the current sick care system. You get sick and then everyone discusses about who's going to pay for it, to a real healthcare system. So that's one I always like to highlight in these discussions. But the final thing I'll mention, because I know we're over time here, is this is the World Talent Economic Forum. And to me, it's the talent of individuals who are going to figure out what kind of mix to use with these new technologies. I'm not an anarchist, though some people might think so, but I understand that government bureaucracies everywhere have their own vested interests. They often get in the way of progress. And in this country, the Food and Drug Administration is an example of that. So that's why I want to make sure we keep an open system so that talent can try this, try that. This doesn't work. Let's try this thing. And that also means, by the way, that it means that the bureaucracies in big companies get challenged. Because we've seen big companies that no one thought would ever go away or be knocked down, and guess what they were? Because entrepreneurs had the freedom to come in and do something different. So I love talent. I love the fact that we're talking to a lot of talented individuals here in the Asian Pacific area, and I want them to keep the liberty to use their talents to apply these incredible technologies and to keep it human.
Thank you, Professor Edward. Professor Donald.
I love what everybody's saying about the idea of keeping everything human. I also can't much for I actually quit using AT&T back when they were still Southern Bell or whatever they were, because I could never get anyone on the phone. I waited 45 minutes once for somebody on the phone, and when they answered, they said, "I'm changing my service. I can't handle you guys." And I get the current phone company, I get somebody right away, and that's perfect for me. In fact, I would go there. I mean, we've all been stuck in these voice jail things where they have a list of things, and they're all simple things. I tried all those things already. I'm calling them because that list of things that they want me to try didn't work. And I know to try those things. So anyway, it's which I think is a good point to realize really what the state of the intelligence of this artificial intelligence is. I think that's a much stronger indication of where we're at than the idea that we're anywhere close to to general intelligence. The one thing I just want to emphasize is with machine learning, what happens is that you train the AI by millions of examples of something. So for an instance, when the computer program won at Go, the way it won at Go is that it played 1 billion games of Go with itself. And it eventually figured out how to play Go better than people. But but that is so narrow. I mean, it can't do anything else except play Go. And the only reason it can play Go is because it played 1 billion games of Go. What is a cautionary thing with AI, and it was something that, I forget his name now, but brought up, is that it's mostly trained with people, as I said, from in medical, from California and Boston and a couple of other places, but it's also for people of different races, of different. We're not getting as good of information because of the way that it's trained. So that's why it's really useful for people that are augmenting their intelligence. I mean, a calculator is augmented intelligence. Doug Engelbart, who created the user interface, basically graphical user interface, his whole plan was to have multiple graphical user interfaces that serve different functions for different things. So if you wanted to do, tensor calculus, you would have a graphical user interface that would make it super simple for you to do that. And so his whole idea was to augment human intelligence and expand human intelligence. And so that's something that we're really getting to, and it's something that's actually able to happen. But as everybody said, the human part of it is that we have to realize that what it's really doing, its main thing is normative. I mean, it's looking for patterns and trying to figure out what the most average pattern is. And so if we start using it for education, if we start using it for basically defining what the whole idea of a nanny is kind of scary too, because how you would have to train the thing to be a nanny is to figure out what the most average nanny was like and what the most average kid was like, so that the average nanny would train this to be the most average kid, which is exactly the opposite of what really you want if you want a society with creativity and all that and able to solve the problems that we have. So I think it's an exciting area, and it's incredibly valuable and useful to be able to use those tools. But I agree with everyone else that there's a cautionary note there about how we have to really try and understand how the human element of it and how using these things are affecting us. Oh, I want to say one other thing. I don't know if everybody knows this, but there's a book called Snow Crash by Neil Stephenson. And that is where the term the metaverse came from. And so he actually has a very good story of the metaverse. So if you want to find out about the metaverse, read Snow Crash. It's one of the best science fiction books ever. So there you go. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Thank you. Professor David J. Kelly.
So I think I want to bring up just one thing, and it goes back to something that I think it was David Smith mentioned, and a couple other people mentioned his comment about augmented intelligence. And I think maybe, I mean, this is a type of, you could call it augmented intelligence, but I think where humanity's, in a way, future is in collective intelligence. Even when you start talking about the singularity and collective superintelligence and these kinds of things, humanity together with these kinds of technologies like AR and AI and machine learning and all of the other stuff can be used to create this collective intelligence in a way that will allow us as a species to do pretty much anything, as whatever that we decide as a species to do. And that includes keeping up with these machines that are supposedly super intelligent. And I think we will get to the point of having, this singularity in terms of machines that are smarter than people. But when you start talking about collective intelligence, especially systems like that generate like active superintelligence through the collective use of AI and humans, I don't think there's anything that can really get in our way. It's just how we use the technology. And I think that's something we'll see kind of as an emerging trend over the next couple decades, is collective intelligence systems, not just narrow machine learning or augmented intelligence on an individual level, but it's when you start talking whole communities and whole groups of people that function as a meta-organism that we're really going to see dramatic change.
Thank you. Madam Dulcie, yes, what's your concluding remarks?
So I want to say to David Kelly, a lot of the things that you're talking about are happening actually right now. They're not
They are.
on the road. They're not 5 years down the road. They're actually happening right now. And
Yeah.
people are developing these things right now and utilizing those, the collective understanding of everybody and bringing that into artificial intelligence. That's something that my company is aggregating at the moment and working on right now.
You should reach out to me. We're doing the same thing in my company, is
cool.
collective intelligence systems.
Yep. So we're working on that with Perception Grid, and so another thing is children today are born, the Gen Alpha. I mean, I'm sure everybody here on this panel is, over 40 or close to 40, right? So we grew up, right, with television and radio. And when we grew up, television and radio were granted. Like it was existed. It just existed, and we used it, and we knew how to use it as children, and it was a given. And when I discovered that television just was, 10 years old by the time I was born, it was only a 10-year-old technology, that kind of blew my mind. I didn't know that it was such a recent technology in relation to my life, right? These children that are being born right now, Gen Alpha, are being born with all of this technology at their disposal. And there's something about this generation of children, they are more aware of society's movements and technology than we were aware. I mean, they're being born instantly with FaceTime, where they can talk to their friends at a distance and have play dates on FaceTime. They're being born in a world where every moment of their life is being recorded, and they're able to go back and look at those moments and swipe through. And we have children that are, 2, 3 years old that really understand how to use this technology. So, they're a different breed of people than we were. They're already evolved in a way, being born evolved. So we got to understand that. And when I talk about the nanny aspect, I'm not even saying a nanny. The word nanny was kind of thrown around by Mark. My idea of the AI is more of a companion. So something that is born with your child, that has the same naivete, the same, lust for learning, the same everything, that is a companion with the child, that learns and grows and becomes a proxy to you, and not necessarily, a guardian, overarching guardian. The guardian aspect that I'm talking about are guardian aspects that are basic. So, basic things for raising a child, basic things for dealing with the world, that helps you traverse both or all three: real space, augmented space, and virtual space. Because we're going to need those things in place. We're going to need some sort of systems that really watch over us and care for us in the future as we start getting deeper and more immersed in these technologies. Because again, it's not down the future. This is happening now. We have headsets that can do both augmented and virtual reality connections at the same time. And then now you start adding in different types of infrastructure around the world that support that and support people using those things out in the real space. So, this is all happening at the moment. And, I agree with Ali. We have to really keep humans at the center of it all. I feel that cities and municipalities need to come up with areas that are completely free of technology, Faraday zones of sorts, where people who want to break away from it and not be bombarded with waves and frequencies or whatever, magnetic poles, they can go into this space and be free of it and kind of, disconnect. I think that's important. We do need to have those spaces, and natural spaces in the world shouldn't be mapped in that way. I don't think, like, national parks or, ocean lines, places where you really connect with the planet and with the earth, I think need to be dealt with in a sacred way and as we move forward. So it's really important for all of us to just really work together and make this all a reality that's safe and healthy for humanity moving forward. Because these new babies that are being born, they're on it. They're more advanced than we are, and it's we have to be aware of that.
Thank you everyone for joining today's session. I want to give special thanks to Good News because they just published news that what we did with Malaysian government in Dubai Expo. This is one of the largest public-private partnerships dialogue, and the next one we will start with this Rwanda government. So hopefully your contribution will be very, very effective, especially World Talent Economy Forum. We are working for national contributions. We are working for the national developments, and we need more of your support with your knowledge, with your expertise, with your solution, because I always said developing nation has many problems. They need more solutions. And I'm very much happy how you are contributing through this process. Maybe we can solve many problems, but we need more action. From the speaker, those who want to take really more action through World Talent Economy Forum, you can join, because yes, dialogue is very important, and for changing the world, we need more actions. Example, Mr. Marshalls, you are solving problem for climate change. Maybe it's more important in developing world. Mr. David J. Kelly, you are developing policy, and maybe this is more important in Malaysia. So those who are Transhumanist Party, I know that you have a very, very smart people in your team. So maybe there are you can offer more things in Malaysian university. Maybe you can collaborate with researchers. So I request all of the speakers, please join in actions. We are more in actions. Yes, dialogue is very important, but now we really, really need actions, because we have thousand people. We need to help them. We need to support them. And hopefully by 2022, we will reach millions of people with real actions, with real dialogue. Thank you, Madam Ali Rice, Mr. David Schumacher, Mr. Marshall, Professor Edward, Professor Donalds, Madam Dulcie, Professor David Kelly. Always people ask me why you ask them professor, because in academy, because we are working in academy, we need professor from industry who are professor in practice. In the real world, they are solving many problems. So if you join in our academy, taking class in the classroom, I'm sure our talent will be more benefited. So that's why always I request those who are doing work in the industry, they should join in academy and solve many problems together. So thank you, everyone. This is an excellent session, really, really great session. And I request all of our audience, this type of discussion you should share with your academy, with your government, and with your corporations. Thank you. Bye-bye and take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye-bye.